So the El Segundo Old Town Music Hall, that's
Yes.
the name of the place we're talking about if you haven't been there. It might be one of the greatest places in town, is one of maybe 3 places in the city where you can have an entertainment experience from a time that ended before our parents were even born.
Yeah.
And one of the other 2 places is already on the list that we're going to be covering in this episode. This particular place, it was the brainchild of 2 men, Bill and Bill.
Which one do you prefer? Bill or Bill?
I kind of like Bill.
Bill's great. Bill's great. I don't like Bill, but Bill's great.
Don't tell Bill, but I kind of like Bill better. So I'll start with Bill.
Okay.
No, actually, I'm going to start with Bill. Bill Kaufman was born in the year 1926 in Mena, Arkansas. He was born into a very repressed religious family who loathed music.
Wow.
They were the dad from Footloose, all of them, every single one of them. Of course, that meant Bill grew up loving music.
That's his.
Oh my God. Okay, before we get into this, because I was thinking of girls from movies in the 80s, there's a clothing store on Ventura Boulevard over here owned by the girlfriend from Back to the Future.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe
The original girlfriend from, not Elizabeth Shue.
What?
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm confusing you.
Not his mom.
The girlfriend from the second one is a different girl than the girl in the first one, but they're playing the same girl. And I thought, does Elizabeth Shue own a thing? But no, the first girlfriend. The girlfriends switch in 1 and 2.
Do they?
Yeah.
There's so much actors playing different characters in that movie. I got confused. Yeah, I think it's the second one.
Elizabeth Shue?
It's not Elizabeth Shue. It's
the girl from
something
the
Wells.
first one.
Wells. Her last name is Wells.
Okay, might be the girlfriend from the first one. Elizabeth Shue's the one that falls asleep on the porch.
But then in the second one, she wakes up on the porch.
Yeah, it's the same girl.
All right, I'm very... this is almost as confusing as Back to the Future 2.
Bill, yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting, though. Sorry, I
the
cut you
more
off.
the more girlfriends from Back to the Future, the better, I always say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Bill. Bill grew up loving music because his family hated it. He loved it. Not just that he wanted to play music as well, but since his parents would have none of that, he would watch player pianos, like the automatic ones around town, and match his fingers along to the keys that were being pressed down automatically. And after years of this, he had taught himself how to play piano.
Wow.
And was able to play along with the robots.
It kind of reminds me, like, I think blues players used to cover their hands so you couldn't see what they're playing. I'm like, how effective is that really watching them? But I guess it's on piano, it must be a little different.
Got to protect those licks, man. Yeah, the robots don't mind if you steal a few of their rolls. Luckily, he had an aunt who supported his sinful obsession and encouraged him to become a piano player in nightclubs, which I'm glad that he's a supporter, but I'm not going to encourage...
You're not going to sign off on nightclubs?
Come on, I'm not going to encourage some kid to go hang out in nightclubs all over Arkansas.
You're not far off from his parents.
No. I'm his parents at the end of Footloose. Reluctantly accepting.
Yeah, reluctantly accepting it, but still, like, I would never do that.
You can do whichever you want, but you're not my kid anymore. So eventually he made his way to Los Angeles and became a working musician and got hired to play at the Sirocco Bar in Wilmington, where he stayed for 16 years. So he was like the resident piano guy, the piano man, if you will. But sometime in the 50s, he became interested in the king of all keyboard-based instruments, the mighty Wurlitzer.
Hell yeah.
For those of you who don't know, the mighty Wurlitzer was a brand of pipe organ that had the ability to recreate the sounds of an entire orchestra, but being played by one person operating this insane jigsaw puzzle of keys and levers.
And it is a jigsaw puzzle. And whenever we would go and see Bill play it, it looked like so intricate.
Theirs, we'll get it more into theirs, but theirs is a particularly crazy one. They were popular in movie theaters in the early days of movies because it was a way to fit an entire band complete with sound effects into a theater to play along with the silent movies without having to cram in a whole orchestra or having to pay a whole orchestra. You just pay.
I'm sure it's the second one.
Well, I'm sure the one guy got paid what the entire orchestra would be paid.
Right?
Like 4 pennies.
Why would a theater be stingy about the money?
Give 6 shillings to the piano man. You almost fell over again.
No, I was switching my legs.
You got shocked that I said shillings and you... Foreign currency, which I don't understand what a shilling is. Is it a penny? I
thought it was just a general amount of money.
Give him a general amount of money. That should pay him off. You there in the window. Have this general amount of money. 2 general amounts of money if you're quick.
How much is that dog in the window? It's a general amount of money.
How much is that doggy at the dog park? That's what I'm always offering.
Leave them alone. They're not yours.
They will be. They will be. Bill Kaufman, he wanted to wield the ungodly power of the mighty Wurlitzer, but there was no self-playing mighty Wurlitzer he could copy off of this time. This time he needed a non-robotic human to teach him. And lucky for him, he found probably the best possible person he could find to teach him how to play a mighty Wurlitzer. So living in LA at the time was a man named Jesse Crawford, who was a legendary organ player from the silent era, who was known back then as the poet of the organ.
Whoa. Jesse Crawford, huh?
Yeah, Jesse Crawford, the poet of the organ.
Jesse Crawford?
Jesse Crawford.
Jesse Crawford.
poet of the organ. He was the one who was playing the organ for the movies at the $1 Million Theater downtown in their heyday.
Yeah.
But being the guy who provides live music for movies that had no music, his work was never recorded, and nobody ever left the theater after seeing the Sheik raving about how the live musical accompaniment was so good. It was so good. So by the 50s, he was, only like diehard movie people knew who this guy was, which is tragic that he was, they wouldn't have been enjoying those movies they remembered if he hadn't been playing the music along with those movies. So by the 50s, he was teaching others how to play, and this is who Bill Kaufman went to, so he learned from literally the best.
So he came to LA to learn that?
No, Bill Kaufman had come to LA just to be a working musician, and by chance, Jesse Crawford, poet of the organ.
Jesse Crawford,
poet of the organ. He happened to be living in LA, desperate for money.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, there was a second Bill out there. This Bill was much younger, something of a little Bill, if you will. He was born October 4th, 1939 in Los Angeles. His name was William Charles Field, which I realized after I wrote this that his name was W.C. Field.
Could have got a lot more attention if he went by that name.
Yeah, W.C. Fields, El Segundo Old Town Music Hall. So
$5? I'm going to bring all my friends.
To see the legendary W.C. Fields Music Hall. So this Bill was the son of a dad who was the chief electrician for LAUSD. They call him the poet of electricity at LAUSD. And a mom who is a secretary at LAUSD. So this guy was a LAUSD stock. He was just an average guy from Los Angeles. And it only got more Los Angeles from there. One time, little Bill was taken to the Barker Brothers, who we once talked about, the Barker Brothers department store. I remember making a joke about the Barker Brothers before because they created Dog Monopoly. Do you remember that?
I remember that joke. I was just listening to it. What was I listening? Oh, I must have been listening to, it's not the Judy Garland episode. I don't know. Who knows?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think we talked about this last month. I just remember jokes we made about places in Los Angeles.
I was lying down the other day and out of nowhere, I think I texted it to you. Oh, it was yesterday. I texted you. Every time you listen to Dark Side of the Moon, Munchkin hangs himself. Yeah. Which is like a flash, just like.
And I read that, I'm like, that was pretty funny. And then I thought, wait a minute. Have I said this before?
And I paced my room like, which one of us wrote that? Which one of us came up with that?
Who could take credit for it?
Could I put it in a packet?
Did you see that James Stewart? No, not James Stewart. Frank Capra's granddaughter gave decorations to that lady who was freaking out that her restaurant couldn't have outdoor dining over here. Weird story. So anyway, he went to the Barker Brothers department store downtown on 7th and Figueroa. And
beautiful building.
Something there blew him away. And no, it wasn't that building or the dogs that were playing poker there. And it also wasn't the 50% off corduroy jackets. It was that they had a pipe organ set up in the store being played live for people to listen to while they shopped, which sounds great. I think I've been to one or two stores where there's been around the holidays live music being played. Yeah. Just makes me want to buy.
I don't think I've ever had that experience in my life, but I grew up.
It doesn't really happen at the Dollar Tree.
Goodwill doesn't have someone playing something?
Maybe someone's trying out the piano that's at Goodwill.
They're saying a bunch of racial slurs while they play the piano. Is that normal? Is that what your experience was like?
That's the Goodwill. That's the Goodwill they're talking about. So he fell so deeply in love with this organ that his grandma would take him to the Barker Brothers just to listen to the organ and get that corduroy. He decided to devote the rest of his life to pipe organs and corduroy jackets. And he worked so hard that at age 12, he was hired to play the organ for the Los Angeles Theater downtown.
Wow.
At age 12, he was playing in one of the movie palaces on Broadway.
The Los Angeles Theater.
The Los Angeles Theater. The $1 Million Theater and the Los Angeles Theater we've discussed in that our second episode or something. And now we're finding out, these were the guys actually working there. One of the guys we've met before. So from there, he never really shot to stardom, as no pipe organist ever has. But he made a living playing organ at churches and ice rinks around town, and also repairing other organs. Which when they said ice rinks, I was thinking people are just ice skating and they're playing an organ. But I guess they meant for hockey games.
Yeah, he was for hockey games. I mentioned baseball games.
No.
It's nothing like that. It's more like whatever I said that made no sense.
I said ice rinks. So in 1958, so he was playing those. He was also repairing other organs to make money, like a surgeon, born for the very first time.
Repairing people to make money.
In 1958, the two Bills collided through Bill Fields' organ teacher, and their shared love of this weird instrument bound them together. So that's how they met. People always referred to them as the two Bills, but why didn't they call themselves themselves the double bill. I should have been in charge of marketing this place.
You really should have been. Their on-staff writer.
Which they so clearly could afford. Just by their good luck, but bad luck for organs overall. Around this time, the Fox West theater chain was starting their slow decline and were selling off all their Mighty Wurlitzers from their locations around Los Angeles. So they're just trying, we don't use these anymore, and we also need money because no one's coming to the theaters. The one from the location in Long Beach was from 1925 and was the biggest and most intact one around and was going for $2,000, and the double bill couldn't let this opportunity pass them. So they borrowed the money and bought it on June 12, 1958 before it was too late. So that's where they got this old-ass organ. But there were three...
That's the brand name.
The Mighty Wurlitzer brand, old-ass organ. Crop dusters, yeah.
They're fighting World War II still.
Snoopy's at it again.
If you want to be a Nazi living in Sylmar, guess what? We're going to fight World War II against you.
You shouldn't be flying your Iron Maidens around, or whatever they call their crazy...
Iron Cross?
No, that's what they put on it.
Oh.
What is it called? The Iron Maiden.
So the cockpit is actually a bunch of spikes, and when you close it on you die. But it's a pretty cool image, right? We just had a caller playing
those
Iron
Germans
Maiden.
are kinky people. They were really into that. So they bought this organ. There's three problems now. They had no way of moving it, no place to store it, and as intact as it was broken. They bought a broken organ that they had no room for, barely had the money for, and couldn't move anywhere.
Well, Bill couldn't fix it, but Bill could fix it, right?
Luckily, Bill was there. So to move it, Bill Kaufman asked the merchant Marines he met playing in the bar in Wilmington to help, but it took a week because they had to take it apart and could only do so after the theater was closed for the day. So like the theater would do their last movie, and then all these merchant Marines would come in and like rip pipes out of a wall. Since they had nowhere of their own to put it, one of the Bills managed to convince a relative to let them store it in their studio in Wilmington. But now the problem was the broken parts in the machine. It wasn't, Mighty Wurlitzer wasn't selling new parts to their 1925 Mighty Wurlitzers, so they had to buy leftover parts from the Paramount, United Artists theaters, and one other theater that was also in downtown, then also a theater in Chicago. But even so, the repairs took them a year to get it properly working again.
And this is in the day when they're not so out of date. Like now, I imagine it'd be really hard to repair a Mighty
Even then,
Wurlitzer.
it was a 33-year-old
That's true.
extinct instrument.
I guess so.
If I was trying to find replacement pieces to my Crossfire board game, which... I mean, they have the number. I'll try faxing them. They discontinued these things. I forget when, but like it was not easy to find at all. But yeah, now definitely not
impossible
at all.
Now, but back then I'm sure it was.
Back then, improbable. So to teach them how to even repair this, they got in contact with actual employees from the Wurlitzer company who had been around when these things were being made and knew everything about them. So they taught them. They again were learning from the best of how to repair this crazy old ass instrument. During this process, they seemed to wheel it out to malls in a few places to test it out in concert, and also seemed to move it into a commercial building at one point where they gave shows. But an instrument like this needed a permanent home. They can't be wheeling a Mighty Wurlitzer to Barker Brothers.
Right.
After 10 years of mostly being in storage, they saw an ad in the Daily Breeze for a theater for rent. It was located at 140 Richmond Street in El Segundo. This building was one of the few remaining original buildings from when that street was first built back in 1917. I'm not sure what it was used for those first 3 years, but in 1920 it was bought by a guy named Edward L. Mayberry Jr., who decided to convert it into a theater to provide live performances for the workers at the Standard Oil Refinery, which is like next door.
Yeah, it's if I throw a rock, I could hit the refinery.
Yeah, and it will explode.
And I'm not a good pitcher.
It's crazy when you leave that place. Every single time I've gone there, it's been, because it's right next to the ocean, so it's been like thick fog, and I walk outside and there's all these lights from the oil refinery. Maybe it's not fog, maybe it's just oil refinery. But yeah, it's right over there. So this place was to entertain those workers. And this opened in 1921 as the El Segundo State Theater and was able to entertain 200 workers at a time, and it usually did. They were always packed, because what else are they going to do in El Segundo? And also, what else are they going to do now in El Segundo? Not long after, though, it was converted to provide something oil refinery workers liked more than live performances: movies. That's what those dirty...
I don't want to see a burlesque show with a beautiful woman. I want to watch the Charlie Chaplins.
Yeah, I don't want her to see me like this, covered in crude.
My arms covered in burn scars.
Yeah, go to the theater. That was their health plan. So this lasted for a while, showing movies to these people. And then the Depression hit, of course. It closed up in the mid-30s and spent some boring time as a chamber of commerce and then a Baptist church. But in 1944, when El Segundo was booming again because of that thing that came after the Great Depression, those airplanes that are still flying around, the Iron Maidens of the sky, it reopened as the El Segundo Theater and then got renamed the State Theater in 1957. And then come 1968, it was up for rent, and the Double Bill saw it as exactly what they were looking for and snatched it up. This is the place. They changed things up a bit, like making a little more room by lowering the capacity to 188 seats, which could have fooled me. But they also turned it into this weird old-timey wonderland.
Yeah.
They hung 2 giant chandeliers over the seating. They put up beautiful velvet curtains on the stage. The lobby is a cozy Laurel and Hardy paradise.
Yeah.
There's that weird thing that runs up the wall when you open the bathroom door. It's whimsical.
It's very
just
whimsical.
a whimsical place.
It's sort of like when we were in, it reminds me a little bit, not much, but when we were in San Pedro for that film festival, we went to the Strudel place.
Yeah.
And it felt like we were just in an old woman's living room, and it felt really cozy. That's how I kind of feel about certain parts of Old Time Music Hall. It feels like I'm someone's house who
you're
has
in
a
Bill's
theater.
house.
Yeah, you got Bill's.
You're in Bill's house, and he might have lost his mind in the 70s. It feels like we've talked about the difference between an AMC and a Laemmle theater.
Yeah.
Like if a Laemmle theater feels more homemade, like he just stitched this morning.
Yeah.
This whole theater he just stitched. But you can feel his influence, their influence on all of this. And it's a really fun place. There's a lot of color in there. There's a lot of warm reds. The grand piano on stage is a Bosendorfer, which is also the name of another airplane from World War II. It was made in Vienna specifically for them in 1974. Really? But the main event here is what's behind the curtain.
The first time, because you walk in, you're like, this is really neat. What a beautiful theater. And then the curtain opens. And
the curtain opening is like, when I was reading people's stories of this place, like, that's like an awakening for people when that curtain first opens your first time there. It's crazy. It's insane. Let's talk a little bit about this, what you see behind the curtain. Okay. It's indescribable. This Cthulhu-like instrument. Yeah.
The beauty. I can't even describe it.
I won't even try.
I'm so lost in wonderment.
The console for the Wurlitzer is on stage, but once the lights go down, you start to hear this deep whirring sound.
Yeah. That's
That's the noise of a 10 horsepower Spencer turbine Orgo blow.
That was my wrestler name.
That was your finishing move. Your wrestling name was Spencer Turbine, and your finishing move was the Orgo Blow. So 10 horsepower worth of air is pushing, that's what you're hearing. It's pushing air into what you see when the curtains parts, the massive Wurlitzer apparatus that the Double Bill built. To start, it takes up the entire backstage, and it stretches to the ceiling. It's about 16 feet wide, 36 feet tall. There's 2,600 pipes that can play 268 instruments, including a xylophone, marimba, drums, and cymbals. There's sound effects makers on it that can do horses galloping, machine guns firing, ocean waves, pans crashing to the floor, rain falling, a gong. Yeah. Then for no reason at all, there's things like dolls sitting on a spinning wheel, and most of it's painted in day glow. So you can
because
see
the back of it, behind it, it's pitch black.
Yeah, they want you to see this. Yeah. Like, they're so proud of this, and it's so much fun to watch.
And it's something to be proud of. Not only do they want you to be proud of it, it works.
It's a masterpiece of so many different things.
Yeah.
And this is all controlled on stage by the original organ with 4 keyboards that have 244 keys, 260 switches, and a lot of foot pedals. Bill Kaufman described it as a 1925 computer. Like, if you sat down on this, it would probably explode because there's so many, the floor is just pedals. Yeah. So I don't even know where you would put your foot without ruining whatever other crazy thing you were trying to do. Supposedly, this has become the biggest Wurlitzer setup ever built, but I can't confirm that. The one in Arizona that we saw at Oregon Stop Pizza, that was pretty big, but I guess maybe that was like broken up.
Yeah, it's not like a one big piece.
Yeah,
or
this is
one big piece.
Yeah, one big slice of pizza. Like we said, it's a spectacle when that curtain's open. So this is how shows there would, and for the most part still do when they were open, how they work. After everyone was seated, one of the Bills would go on stage and play the piano for a while, and then switch over to the organ for the traditional sing-along, and then often a short that they would play the organ along to also, and then there would be a little break, and then the other Bill would come out and play the organ along with the entire movie if it were a silent movie. Yeah. Realize that they weren't using sheet music because there's little to no sheet music left for these movies if there ever even was. Yeah. So they're just making it all up as they go and watching the movie and matching the mood of what they're playing. responding to whatever was on screen. So they were making up everything.
They're bebopping.
They were finger scatting. Finger scatting all over the place, which almost as mind-blowing as the apparatus is that they are improvising everything that they're playing. So while one of them was playing, the other one would be running the projector and selling concessions like the homemade macaroons that I always want to try, even though I hate macaroons. But they look so good, but I know I'm not going to like it.
If switched over to loving macaroons, it would probably be those.
It's going to happen there. And that's the promise of the El Segundo Old Town Music Hall. And they'd switch off who did what each night. So they'd always be showing classic old movies, mostly silent, but they'd also do a lot of live concerts from outside musicians who a lot of people want to play that Wurlitzer, so they'd come to play it. They've done a Laurel and Hardy Fest every year, and they also host the longest running ragtime festival in the world. Bill Field even used to own a restaurant next door as well, which would have been fun. It's a really, I can only imagine the spoons like squirt water at you. It's a really great place. As Bill Kaufman put it, we tried to create an escape from the bombardment of modern day electronic trauma.
Electronic Trauma is a pretty good band name.
That's my wrestling name. My finishing blow is the electroshock treatment to the temples. I don't have any.
You really lost that one.
Yeah.
It really slipped through your
hands.
It
was lost before it started. Things went on like this for decades until sadly one of the two Bills was lost. In December 2001, Bill Kaufman died at the age of 75, taking a nap in the theater.
Really?
Like he was apparently waiting for the other Bill, and he came in and he was dead in one of the seats, which is
devastating.
Devastating, scary. I was thinking like, what if I came to record with Greg one day and he was just dead?
And then I would have to CPR just to get the episode, because nothing's going to stop us from doing an episode.
How sure, it would be a little more tricky to edit, but that's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
He had cardiac and pulmonary disease, so it was natural causes. So
that was the saddest part about watching that clip show that we saw was like you see both Bills, and then at a certain point there's only one Bill, and you're like, oh boy.
And like who else shares this crazy passion?
Yeah.
So now it was up to Bill Field alone to keep this thing going, and he did. Now instead of being able to switch off who plays what, Bill Field had to do everything. He got more help as the years went along, but for the most part he was playing the pre-show, sing-along, and main attraction 4 times a weekend, 49 weekends a year, every year. The only weekends they were closed were for Christmas, 4th of July, and the Super Bowl. Every other weekend they would do 4 shows, and he would play everything, all the while making it up as he went for different movies. He wasn't in the best of health either. He had several strokes, prostate cancer, he had a few falls that messed up his knees, so he'd been in a scooter for a while, but he never let any of that stop him. He said, I live in my own world, in my own little island here. What else would I do? I enjoy it. It's my life. Yeah. And it was great. He did such a great thing. I'm not trying to make fun of him, but when he would go up the aisle, he would slowly go up there, and then he would slowly get into the chair and then suddenly start playing. It was like the Willy Wonka pretending to fall thing.
Yeah, pretending to have a limp the whole time, and then like somersaulting.
You'd think like, oh my God, he's in a chair. He's so hard for him to get up there. And then he would just start playing the most incredible thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, I remember a couple times watching him just like kind of just fixated on him playing this giant thing. And I expect him to like turn around and stand up and wave and give like a bow. And you're like, oh yeah, he came on the scooter. That's right.
He has bad knees. He's not going to do a bow. He was the heart and soul of this place, and he was beloved locally. But sadly, June 28th, 2020, just a few months ago, Bill Field died at the age of 80. He's buried at Green Hills Memorial Park in Palos Verdes. So 2020 has been a catastrophic year for them. They had to close, and then they lost the guy keeping it going. So they've done a few virtual shows, but other than that, they've been completely shut down since March because of the virus. And then on top of that, the man who was responsible for keeping it going died. Yeah. So where do they go from here? There's a few people who worked for Bill that have stepped up to run things, not least of all Edward Torres. Mm-hmm. He's the guy we always see who's he was Bill Field's Padawan, if you will. I think he's like 25 years old right now, but he's been playing the piano since he was 7. Bill taught him the ways of the Wurlitzer, so he'll be taking over that if he's able to. But even so, it's been an uphill battle since they first opened in the 60s to get young people interested in this place. And now because of the virus, money is a huge issue. They've got about $5,000 a month in expenses to cover. They have a Save Old Town Music Hall GoFundMe with a goal of $38,000. And last time I checked, they had gotten just under $24,000. Okay. So please donate to that if you can, because there's nothing else like this in LA, maybe even the country, and maybe even the world. So it would really be a shame to see this place go. They've been a 501c3 nonprofit since 1990. They were named a living museum for silent films, classic talkies, and old-time music by the California Assembly in 1995. There were only about 7,000 Mighty Wurlitzers ever built, and today there seems to only be about 326 left in the world and only 281 in the United States, but only about 100 active players, people who
can play it.
Who can actually do that. So give what you can to keep this place going so that it won't get turned into an extension of Rock and Roll Sushi or whatever's around the corner, and I can try a macaroon one day that I'm probably not going to like.
You're probably not going to like it, but you'll try it though, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and then I'll probably ask for my money back.
Yeah, I'll ask for my $1 back, which is sitting right there in a tip jar.
I see it. Look, you're a 501c3. That's not about profits for you.
This is bigger than that.
My distaste of macaroons goes over your tax-exempt status.